And the reason I wanted to discuss the stages of genocide, although it is still happening, we still need to go back to the first stages. I mean, we talk about humanizing Palestinians, but at the same time, people just get upset when they see dead children. I want them to feel actually upset and enraged when they see murdered Palestinian men. When they start seeing our men as humans, then we have actually made progress.
She said that she's really getting weary and tired of my what she considers obsessive behavior. And I know she's referring to postings about Palestine. And I'm just like, my God, this is what bothers you, you know?
Like I'm getting my news from, the reporters on the ground on Instagram and Al Jazeera and The Intercept and 972. But like the vast majority of people that I know are like think they're progressive because they're looking at The Guardian. And if you look at today's, the front page of The Guardian, there's just a teeny tiny little blurb about Gaza at the very bottom of the page. To the person who said, sister told you were obsessive, it's like, we might look obsessive to people who think, well, this is not really, they're just not aware. They're just not even getting the information. It's really, really upsetting. And in my field, I'm an academic, and I have like 3 upcoming talks that I'm managing to reorient, like whatever they were originally intended to be about, I'm managing to like reorient them to ground them in discussion of Gaza. But like I did so a little bit in an online forum I was at yesterday, and I felt like I was the only one, and nobody chimed in or supported, and it's incredibly alienating. I too, I feel like my world has shrunk so much, and I'm just enraged and so incredibly grateful for Layla and all of you, because I just having this contact with other like-minded people is so crucial right now.
Yeah, I share probably the same frustrations as everybody here, just as you were saying with seeing pictures of food. I think the bigger issue for me is, being involved in a vegan organization. I look at my peers and their organizations, and just to see them posting pop culture memes right now about plant-based consumerism. Yeah, I mean, just basically just having just such a humorous time about, like there's just nothing going on whatsoever. And I don't forgive and I don't relate to, but I do comprehend, I understand how you get to a point so corporatized in the funding of your organization that you quote unquote cannot say or do certain things with your platform. Again, I don't agree with it, but I can understand. But what I don't understand is then taking this kind of moment and still just trampling over it with just complete sophomoric garbage. I think there's a way to handle it, to show that you're in solidarity without necessarily calling out your, Zionist funders or what have you. It's really disappointing, and it's been months now, and it hasn't gotten any easier to see or consume. I thought it might. I thought I would get used to it. I unfollowed hundreds of people, but it's not getting any better. As a vegan, we're already so small. So having to then divorce myself from so many other platforms and organizations, it's like, I don't know, I'm stuck feeling like, what do I even have left, or who do I have left? It's so strange to take inventory and see who's left.
I'm a plant-based nutritionist, and I am supposed to work with other plant-based health professionals. And there are just a handful who have actually spoken. None of the big organizations, not a single one has said something. And I feel like moving forward, how am I going to actually work with these people? And I don't know how I'm going to carry on moving forward. I really don't know. But right now, I'm just so heartbroken, this grief, this pain. I mean, I find it so difficult to work every single day anyway. But yes, this silence. And what I have noticed is, I don't know if any of you has noticed it, a lot of organizations, what they do is, because they know they should be talking about this issue and they are not, they have stopped posting. They only post once in a blue moon about something really important, an event coming up. So they know they should be actually speaking up. Yeah, I have noticed there's a bit of silence in general, that they are not even posting their usual posts because they know, they feel guilty. To be honest, like you said, and I'm glad that you said it, I'm not going to forgive anybody. I mean, this is really bad. They cannot get away with it. You cannot call yourself vegan, And to be honest, I'm also kind of disappointed by all these Black vegans. They should get what it means to be oppressed and to need allies. So, yeah, it has been quite disappointing.
I finally connected with one yesterday, and it's because I saw that photo of the donkey with the head cut off on a spike. So I sent that to him, and his reaction was, "Oh my God, that's awful," which then began our conversation. And I was like, is it money? Is it the funding? Is it that you don't want to hurt the feelings of your Jewish fellow leader in the group? What is it? Why can't you speak up? And he gave some fairly lame reasons, but I think what it boils down to, he doesn't want to rock the boat within the organization. I'm still hoping. I mean, this guy has a soft heart. It's breaking my heart just to even say it. So I feel like there's something blinding him.
The reason we want actually to discuss these 10 stages of genocide is because if we don't understand it, it keeps happening. Especially if we look at the first 4 stages. We see that everywhere. Or when we talk about racism in the US or in the UK or any other country, this is because of the first 4 stages. So when we actually call out people when they make a racist comment, it is just because we want to prevent it. It's not because we want to expose somebody. No, it is just really a coincidence that it is the Holocaust, okay? I'm not being anti-Semitic or anything. It is just the best picture I could find because all the other pictures were quite full of text and I didn't want that. So anyway, let me start. If you remember, last time we discussed the wheel of power, and I thought it was really crucial for us understanding our position on that wheel of power before we discuss the 10 stages of genocide, because the different markers of identity that we have, and there are many markers, and some of those markers are more important than the others. For example, skin color seems to be more important, in my opinion, at least. And depending on where those different identity markers are on that wheel, you may be closer to the center, and the center is where the power is. And if you're away from the center, you'll be on the margins and you'll have less power. As I said, some markers are more important, they carry more weight, and it's a bit of a complex issue, and we could even argue if the wheel of power is actually a good tool. It is good enough to understand who has the power. Now, because those who are in the center, and that is what we have been witnessing in the last 4 months, those who are in the center, they have more power. And if you have more power, you can actually dominate the narrative. You can actually push your agenda. And that is exactly what we are seeing with the mainstream media. Those who have the power, I mean, we talk about all these vegan organizations and the funding they are getting. So those who have the money actually dominate what actions those organizations take. It's important to understand that. Those who have the power, they will carry on telling us what to do, basically. And, genocides don't just happen. They don't just happen overnight. It takes time to prepare people for it, to change people's mindset, perceptions, and their sensitivity. I mean, as humans, none of us really wants to see somebody else suffer, especially in societies. Children and women usually, they are perceived as the most vulnerable. And doctors, nurses, all these healthcare professionals, and even, churches or mosques. These are kind of, places and people, we trust them. We see them as selfless, like kind of sacred places, selfless individuals, and we want to protect them, or we don't want to harm them, and we don't want to witness their suffering. So before a genocide can happen, we need to make those very members of the society, like children, women, we need to change how we see them so that we can actually watch them being killed without feeling any rage. So how does it start? It starts with classification. What it is really is classifying a group of people or groups of people as the other. So it is us versus them. Then we attaching a symbol to those people. who are different from us, because that way we can easily identify them. If you think of Muslims, anybody who's wearing the hijab, or the men, the beard. So these are the symbols that we attach to those people we have othered, who are the other. Then discrimination. Now, discrimination can take a few different ways. It can be just us treating people differently, but also it can be like kind of the law. There are actually kind of laws which say that a group of people don't have certain rights. Or ordinary citizens treat you as a second-class citizen, and the law, or those who should actually uphold the law, just look away. They let it happen. And then dehumanization. And dehumanization is really just seeing somebody as a second-class citizen, inferior. So it's like a hierarchy. And those people who are different to us, they are at the bottom of that hierarchy. So that is how it happens. And these, stages are really important. And I'll get back to that in a bit. And then the rest is, getting organized, just preparing and, carrying on with the persecution and extermination and denialism afterwards. I want to go back to the first stages, because the current genocide, we keep saying it started 76 years ago. But when we think of the classification and symbolization and discrimination, that actually started centuries ago. And I believe the us versus them, the act of othering, actually started with colonization. When white colonizers invaded a country, and then they saw the new kind of inhabitants of that country as savages because their lifestyle was different, they looked different. So they started treating them as inferior. And then, we always put a lot of emphasis on technological advancements in the not just in the West, everywhere really. And it is important because if you have more weapons, again, what we see right now, if you have military dominance, you can actually easily dominate people. You can actually tell them what to do. So technologies are important, but at the same time, the point I'm trying to make is that what we perceive is that any society that has access to advanced technologies, we see them again as superior, as civilized. Any society that is different to all these markers which we have identified as civilized, they are going to be perceived as uncivilized. And it feels like, if somebody is uncivilized, we feel like it's okay to eliminate them. We almost feel it is our duty to do that. And again, that is what happened with colonization, isn't it? The white Christians went to all these other countries, and they even wanted to introduce their religion to them because they felt like even the Christian religion was seen as the superior religion. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to just stop now.
I couldn't comprehend for the longest time how in the world that any person, especially the Jews, could possibly be carrying out this, until I saw the documentary Israelism. And every one of these steps is part of their indoctrination that begins in childhood. That was made really clear. And I think it takes a strong, brave person that's gone through that to break away. Because it's like a cult. I mean, it's literally like a cult. You have to break away from it. And the end is being carried out. The last, preparation's been going on for forever, right? Persecution. Now we're into 9 and 10. Well, 9.
I've also really been realizing lately that it isn't just that Jews are superior or better and Muslims are all dirty and horrible, et cetera, that whole bullshit. But I'm also realizing they're terrified. All Arabs want to kill all Jews. Right. That's part of what they're raised with. And, one interview I saw, like one guy said after he woke up, he was raised in Israeli Zionism and he woke up. And it's like anything else. They heard things, they thought things, and one day they got it. So I'm talking to people about veganism. So it's like, I invite you to come back and train us, Layla, on Vegans for Palestine. You know, we need to learn how to break through. And like I say, the longer people resist saying anything about this, the more clear and empowering we need to be to get them to wake up. But I really saw how terrified they are of these people. That's another way that they can put them down and be so. I was surprised they didn't pull out buffet tables when they were doing the dance to not let the food in. And I expected them to have water pouring all over the place, you know, just as another like one of those. So I think they're terrified. And I think when you're scared, you get more irrational. So I think that's a lot of what's going on.
That is true. Thank you. Yes, I agree. And it is interesting because there was this lady who was following me and I was following her on Instagram. She was a vegan. And then I posted something about, you know, Palestine. I think it was end of October. And she was like, no, we need to free Palestine from Hamas. And she went on and on. And then she started sending me messages, private messages. And I could really see she was like, if we don't do anything now, they're going to kill every single Jew. And then they're going to come to Europe, kill us, all the Muslims. And I was like, look, I'm a Muslim. And she was, no, yeah, but you not you. And it is interesting because I grew up in Austria. I was the only foreigner, because in Austria we are called foreigners, the only foreigner in a school. And they would talk about other foreigners. And I would always remind my schoolmates, look, I'm a foreigner. And they would say, yeah, but not you. We know you. You are okay. All the other foreigners, they are bad.
You know, I haven't composed this thought very well, so bear with me. But as you were going through the stages, I just thought to myself, you know, how unfortunately muddied it can get in the dehumanization aspect as vegan community members, organizers, you know, whatever our role is, because we know from our perspective and in our work that, you know, dehumanization takes on this other layer of consideration where we talk about devaluing the non-human animals and, you know, how we would like to create more of an equal footing and equal consideration for rights and justice and liberation. However, in the broader context of the world, you know, we still need to recognize, of course, that dehumanization is what it really implies, the power that it holds and the implications behind it, beyond just feeling that people are speciesist and this is a speciesist world. So I call this to attention because what I have seen in vegan spaces, I guess less so these days, but definitely still a trail of following from the Gary Yourofsky days, you know, where people are called, or myself as a Black woman, you know, gets called, or other Black organizers I speak to get called a monkey, for example. And then we're told from other vegans, hey, you know, that's not meant to be a slur. And the fact that you're offended by it just shows that you're speciesist and you don't understand what we're doing here. And you can't, you know, so it's really kind of tricky coming into these conversations about dehumanization as a person of color, because as any number of us would tell you, that we still do face dehumanizations on various levels, and interpersonally and institutionally, et cetera. So I was just thinking about that, how tricky it is to sort of work through those very early warning signs of genocide, and dehumanization being probably the most observable of the ones you can look out for, right? Because symbolism doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing, et cetera. Or, you know, us versus them, it's kind of this human grouping mechanism that we have, you know, dividing things. So we're not necessarily in danger yet, but you become in danger once you hit dehumanization. And then, you know, in our work as vegan activists, we kind of have this other layer to sort of tackle. And it just gets pretty interesting and pretty muddied. So it's something that I've been dealing with a lot as some vegans who are, you know, pro-Palestine and wanting to contribute something. People have sent me their work and asked me to review it. And they're making this argument about how we shouldn't be offended by dehumanization, right, as animal rights activists. And it's getting really uncomfortable. And I'm still sorting through that. So I thought this was the place to share that. But I guess I also can pass on to be mindful, you know, because there is a lot of nuance there when we're talking about dehumanization.
There are a lot of nuances, as you say, but where would you say that it is not a joke anymore? I actually had one of the discussions I had recently on Facebook with someone who is pro-Palestine and vegan. She was like, "Oh, it's just a joke." I said, "Yeah, it's a joke to you because you're white. It's not a joke to me as a person of color, especially because it was actually really about Iranians. It wasn't just about Muslims, or it was about Iranians." And I was like, kind of, listen to me. I am an Iranian. When I tell you that is not funny, then it is not funny. Be humble. Be willing to learn. And as people of color, it's always, when do I show up for myself? Because it's also really, when it happens, and it is personal, it is about you. I find it so much easier when it is about somebody else. I find it easier to say, "Oh, don't do that." But when it is about myself, when do I actually say enough? I don't know.
Yeah, I just wanted to say there has been a lot of really interesting writing on this subject of the intersection, for example, of anti-Blackness and speciesism and colonialism and animalization.
I find sometimes when I read these books and they are intersectional, I find like the Iranians, I always say actually Iranians are the forgotten vegans because nobody really bothers to create any material for them. I applied 3 times for grants to, create something for Iranians, and everybody say, "Yes, it sounds good, but no." And I feel like we are not really even seen as people of color, and that is something which a lot of Iranians actually enjoy because they don't want to be seen as people of color. They want to be like white and modern and Western, kind of civilized. So I think a lot of times these books, I feel actually they don't address what I experience as an Iranian in vegan spaces. I don't belong to the more streamlined, marginalized groups.
Exactly. And it doesn't help that the Nazis appropriated the Caucasus as the origin of white people. And like my middle name is Ariana, which is a beautiful name, but I feel like I can't use it because, of the white supremacist connotations that the Nazis attached to it.
I completely so appreciate these conversations, and I wish we had more people because we need to keep learning. But I look at where we are now with Gaza, Sudan, Congo. We're already past the first 9 stages. It's like, what do we do now? We can start to, educate people so that the next 5 generations of children aren't raised to be bigots and fuckfaces. What do we do now about these things going on, since we have all the leadership in the world apparently behind them? It's great to start identifying and educating, and I'm all for that. But it's sort of like right now, what can we do with Sudan? What can we do with the Congo? What do we do?
That is a very good question. And to be honest, I don't know. I mean, every day I wake up and I just feel maybe we should all, my sister was saying today, we should all go on hunger strike, or we should all just leave our jobs and, go and sit on the street, just sit there until they stop the bombing. I have no idea. I wish I knew. To be honest, as a person of color, as a Muslim, I really believe that it is up to our white allies, especially Jewish people, to do something. I really believe that in the end, with this genocide, the Jewish people will help us. Because at the end of the day, they are doing it in their name. So they have more power. When I was watching this interview with Gaber Mater, he said the same thing. His sons were saying the same thing. Because they are Jewish people, it is easier for them to get through to other Jewish people. So I think we need the Jewish allies.
Hey, Layla. And hey, everybody else. Yeah, I kind of wanted to respond to this question of what we can do at this stage, because obviously we are so past the point of it just being about, obviously there is a critical need for education, but like it's gone so far beyond that at this stage. I kind of want to raise a question about how much power Jewish people are actually having as individuals, not as in having like institutional power or money or, but just as Jewish individual people, because we are seeing obviously a lot of Jewish people getting involved in the struggle to free Palestine. So there is a lot of action there, but I have really been questioning this myself as a Jewish person who is very involved in this struggle, who has been involved for the past 15 years. But I've really been thinking about that a lot lately, because that is based on the idea that Israel actually is what it says, that it actually is supposed to be representing the interests of Jewish people, right? But it's very interesting because what I've been seeing in the last couple of months is really making me question whether Israel, as in the government and the military, actually cares about Jewish people at all. And I'm even talking about Israeli Jews, because look at the way that they have been treating their own hostages. I mean, they're shooting their hostages when their hostages are like raising their hands in the air. They were the ones, I mean, the Israeli military opened fire on those hostages initially. Most of those deaths that happened on October 7th were not from Hamas. They were from the Israeli military. You know, the Israeli military was throwing grenades into the houses, killing people. So, you know, really, it's kind of like they're using Jews and the interests of Jews as a sort of ruse to make everybody believe that's what it's about. But it's very, very obvious at this stage that that's not at all what it's about. In fact, the Netanyahu government, so there were some very far right wingers, you know, the settlers tend to be like the far right wingers, and they had some people that were taken hostage. And I have to say, I think Hamas actually gambled on this idea, oh, you know, if we take Israeli Jews, the Israeli government will give us our people that they've been holding hostage in the prisons all these years because they value the lives of their Jewish citizens so much. And we're seeing that that's really not the case. And so what happened was the Netanyahu government actually got so there were some far right settlers that had family members that were taken, and they got them to speak to the Jews who were not so far right, but just, you know, citizens of Israel that had family members taken. And those far right settlers said to the other Jews, you need to stop thinking of yourselves in this situation and your family members. You need to put your personal interests and attachments aside, because this is not about you. This is about our country. And this is about our country's future. The other Jews were very upset about that. The other Jewish Israelis. And, you know, this kind of like whole thing erupted, and then somebody leaked an audio tape. And so, I mean, there's just like a lot of stuff going on here that is telling me that they don't actually give a you know what about what Jews think. It'll make them look bad in terms of publicity if Jews are coming out en masse. And I certainly absolutely want them to, and, you know, will encourage them to, and continue to encourage them to, and obviously continue to do that myself. But I do at the same time think that we need to question that idea a little bit as to whether they even really care about what Jews think or about their public image, even at this stage, or not.
Thank you. I agree. I think we all agree, well, at least I hope so, that the Israeli government doesn't care about Jews. But the image they are actually presenting to the outer world, everybody you speak to, they think it is about Judaism. So I think the more Jewish people come and say, look, it is not about that. It is powerful, because they're not going to listen to a Muslim. When I talk to them and say that, they're not going to listen to me because I'm a Muslim. I'm biased, obviously, you know. But if a Jewish person comes and says, look, Netanyahu doesn't care about us, they say, tell me a little bit more. And I think, so it's not about just Jewish people, white people. Because if you're white, you're closer to the power. People believe you more. People, I don't know. It is just, you know, being white, you have privileges. The privileges I don't have. So that's why I think Jewish people, white allies, they have the power to educate the others.
I just had another thought as you were speaking, which is, because I'm just rethinking all of this for myself, you know, and I'm kind of like sharing all of these thoughts that I've been having. So, you know, there's the question of Jews speaking truth to power, so to speak, right? Jews kind of trying to go up, you know, against these sort of like heads of state or, you know, whatever, and say, hey, you don't speak in our names. And, you know, we're going to really put ourselves out there to kind of like expose you as the frauds that you are. And I just keep feeling like they're just kind of looking at that like a little gnat that they have to flick away, right? But I think there's like some potential power here is, you know, of course, there's like this sort of like horizontal organizing and this horizontal conversation, right? Which I think is more what you're talking about, Layla, is, Jews speaking to other people and other Jews and other white people. Jews are not necessarily white, but I also keep thinking about the Israeli Jews. They are directly involved. Israel cannot carry on its actions without their participation. To me, that's really the core issue here, is actually this IDF sign up and their participation, because they are getting all of these young Israelis that are just going into that military, and they're the ones who are carrying these actions out. And it's like, can they be reached? Because they don't have the institutional power. So it is more on a horizontal level in that direction. But on the other hand, they are playing a very, very, very powerful role structurally. So one thing I want to mention is, I don't know if everybody here knows about this, but Israeli anarchist left, who are very anti-Zionist and as radical as you can get, there's actually a very big connection with veganism with them, because they were originally a veganarchist movement. I'm thinking, can we get a conduit into Israel itself? And can we get a conduit into speaking to Israeli youth? Because they're the ones that are then going into the military, right? If we can get them to do a mass resistance and refuse to participate in the military, that's really going to strike at the core of this issue. So to me, it's like, can we focus on the strategic level of connecting with the Israeli veganarchist left, and how can we build power to then speak to other Israeli young people and try to build it that way? I don't know, because I feel like that's really, we've got to strike at the core of this issue. On the horizontal level, I feel is the best hope we have. That's just talking about Palestine. I'm not even getting into Sudan and, Yemen, oh my God, and Syria. It's also kind of like, we're going to need a multi-pronged strategy. Obviously, we're going to need many, many, many different people focusing in many, many different areas. One thing that I will say is, I've really been thinking about vegan mutual aid, if we want to do it in a kind of connect the vegan movement, and can we get people, on the ground? I mean, plant the land is not something that is not replicable. This can be done in other parts of the world. So I don't know. I mean, it's going to be like, that's just obviously emergency aid. That's not going to stop the genocide. But I'm just thinking, like, how can we leverage what we have at our disposal? I would certainly say another thing, where all of these things are concerned is, and obviously, I certainly want to acknowledge that this is easier for white people to do than people of color, more dangerous. But things like direct actions, like blocking arms shipments. But I do want to stress this idea that at this stage, I'm concerned that there is not very much concern about their reputation. Like, the ruling class doesn't really care that much about their reputation. I'm seeing less and less of a concern of trying to keep up this veneer that they really believe in human rights, and basically just kind of like, they're really showing themselves for who they truly are. So I would advise that we want to find other methods of stopping this that do not rely on this idea of, if we can just expose them for the frauds that they are, that's going to be enough, because I don't think they care that much at this stage.
Thank you. I agree. I don't think they care. I mean, they post publicly. Who would do that? They don't care at all. But we can use that to get those who are on the fence to change. That's why I think it is more important. You were talking about the youth, who's actually going to the military. But it's also the same with big organizations. Individuals taking action is not going to have the same impact as large organizations coming and asking for a ceasefire. And I know that many of them, I have seen them at the protest. They go to protest, but their organization's silent. Yes, and then when you say about Sudan, Congo, to be honest, I truly believe that Palestine has woken us up. The Palestinians are paying the price right now. And that's why we who have the privilege of being in the West, and the more privilege we have, the more we have a responsibility we have. We need to continue doing all of that. But at the same time, we need people higher up to do something. We need countries like Saudi Arabia. If Saudi Arabians would do something, we need powerful countries to actually put pressure. How can we help with that? I don't know. But I just think we need to continue. We cannot lose hope, because that is exactly what they want us to do. They want us to feel hopeless. They want us to say, like, okay, we cannot do anything, just give up, carry on going back to our lives. Let's just see what's happening in our own lives. They want that.
One of the victims of Zionism is Judaism, that they've conflated it. One of the purposes of Zionism was to conflate Zionism and Judaism. I worry for the Jews of the world, because do you carry a badge that says, I'm a Jew, not a Zionist? You know, I worry. And just also, it's not just Israeli kids joining the army. It's Jews from all over the world that they take on trips there and do all this stuff. They have so many people all around the world who want to go fight the dirty Arabs. You know, it isn't just in Israel.
And the reason I wanted to discuss the stages of genocide, although it is still happening, we still need to go back to the first stages. I mean, we talk about humanizing Palestinians, but at the same time, people just get upset when they see dead children. I want them to feel actually upset and enraged when they see murdered Palestinian men. When they start seeing our men as humans, then we have actually made progress. And I think that is why we need to go back and, you know, go to the first stages, and they still matter, because that is how we can change the opinion of those who are not speaking up, those who are silent, those who are neutral, those who are still talking about two sides after 4 months, for God's sake. Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank you.
you so much, Leila.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Appreciate it.
Bye.